As far as India is also concerned, let's also talk about this much anticipated Donald Trump and President Putin meeting that would be happening in Alaska on the Friday this week. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has also spoken with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He dialed the Indian Prime Minister and urged for a peaceful resolution to the ongoing conflict. Prime Minister Modi also shared that he heard Zelensky's perspective on the recent developments and has conveyed India's consistent position on the need for an early and peaceful resolution of the conflict. He also reiterated that India remains committed to making every possible contribution in a resolution to war and further strengthen bilateral ties with Ukraine. In a post on a social media platform X, Zelensky stated that India's importance in supporting peace efforts, where he also emphasized on the necessity to limit the export of Russian energy, particularly oil, to reduce its potential and ability to finance the continuation of its war. However, the Ukrainian president concluded by expressing his eagerness to meet Prime Minister Modi at the UNGA in September this year. However, India has made it clear that it welcomes the upcoming talks that will be happening between the two world leaders in Alaska. Now, the call comes after the Russian President Putin and Prime Minister Modi also had a telephone conversation wherein the Prime Minister reiterated that this is not an era of war, while also stressing on the need to bring in on a peaceful solution to the war. Now, these conversations indicate a sustained diplomatic engagement between India and Ukraine, with both of the leaders discussing various aspects of the conflict and exploring avenues for cooperation. It also comes at a time when Donald Trump is scheduled to meet President Putin on the 15th of August and have reportedly spoken privately as many as 7 times since Trump. Now, when it comes to his office is concerned, back in 2021, and this would be their first face-to-face meeting since 2019. Now, this meeting's main agenda will be, as expected, on ending the war as soon as possible, a ceasefire that needs to be established.
Well, we're going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin, and at the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made.
How will you know that?
Because that's what I do. I make deals.
So India and the role that it seems to be sustaining as far as when it comes to playing a role where it is asking both countries and saying that this is not an era of war. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been meeting both of the leaders as well. Let's take you through a timeline on what all has happened in the past, which has now led to this conversation that continues to happen between the leaders of Ukraine and Russia. Now, back in February 2022, Prime Minister Modi spoke with President Zelensky, and that time what is being also said in months later, the leaders also discussed the safety of nuclear installations. Now, back in December 2022, Zelensky had reached out to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and back in 2024, in the month March, Zelensky had thanked India for its support. Thereafter, when it comes to another development, Modi-Zelensky meeting that happened at the G7 summit. And in September 2024, Prime Minister also met Zelensky during his US visit. Now, all of these developments that has been taking place, Shunjoy, there have been leaders back at home saying that it seems that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is the only world leader who can seem to have developed a healthy relation with both the leaders of Russia and of Ukraine.
It's very important to remember that India has always spoken about a ceasefire. India has always spoken about diplomatic negotiations. And President Zelensky will remember that Prime Minister Modi had publicly told President Vladimir Putin that this century is not the era of war. Now, India wants a quick end to the conflict because let's not forget, over 1 million people, if you consider dead and wounded, Russian and Ukrainian, have died in this or have been badly injured in this fighting. That's a huge number. And that also, you add to that the number of civilians who have suffered. So enough suffering has happened over 3 years. No end to the war is in sight. It's particularly important that at least some effort is made to end this war. And if India can help, India is ready to do it. And South countries, including India, have also suffered because of this. In the sense, the oil prices have been higher, food grain prices have been higher, fertilizer prices have been higher. It has affected many countries. So the earlier the war ends, the better it will be. And President Zelensky remembers what Prime Minister Modi told Mr. Putin,
Yes.
that this century is not the era of war. And Mr. Modi has spoken with both leaders and told them very clearly that he hopes that the war will come to an end.
Well, that has been as far as India's commitment is also concerned, which the Prime Minister has also reiterated, to extend all possible support for the cause of peace. And India seems to be on that readout, seems to be mentioning what happened between the talks that happened between Zelensky and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Srinjoy continues to be with us. Let's get you another round of breaking update. What we are learning now, this is another big development that is now taking place.